Hey there, and welcome back. I love Land Rovers, and this is just a small collection of the Land Rovers that I've accumulated over the years. And I was lucky enough that on Christmas Eve, I was able to purchase my first classic Defender. And not only that, but it's a very special one. This is a Defender 90 pickup truck with a 300 TDI diesel engine. This is a very rare vehicle to find here in the United States, and this particular one was imported from Germany. I bought this vehicle on the auction website BringATrailer, and I never thought that I'd be making a video like this, but I buy vehicles all the time, and I have never dealt with a more incompetent seller than the one that sold me this vehicle. In fact, some people might even say the way the seller listed it borders on fraud. Through this auction, I learned a lot of things about BringATrailer, and because the way BringATrailer is run, you might be giving BringATrailer too much credit just as I did. Let's dive into what happened. Let's first talk about the Land Rover that I bought. This vehicle had been listed on BringATrailer before, so there were a lot of comments that I could comb through and get an idea of what the community thought of this vehicle. As you can see from the pictures that are 2 years apart, it looks like a lot of work has been done to this Defender in that time, and that is exactly what the dealer is advertising, showing us pages of invoices for this vehicle. The first red flag that I should have seen for this dealer is that they were charging an additional $200 document fee on top of whatever the vehicle sold for. Now, if you were a dealer and you took your car to a normal auction house like Mecum or Barrett Jackson, you are not allowed to charge any more fees. You decided to put your vehicle into an auction, and whatever the vehicle sells for, that's how much you get. And we all know that if you walk into a dealership and there's all kinds of fees that they're throwing on that invoice, the majority of those are completely fake, and the dealership is just a terrible place. There are tons of videos on YouTube going over all of these fees, including the document fee, which is used to cover the licensing and titling fees that the dealer will have.
This is the fee you pay to have a dealer employee register the sale of your vehicle with the state licensing offices wherever you live. A small fee is reasonable, but document fees are very abused.
And in my case, I did that all myself. They sent me the title, I went to my courthouse, did all the titling, so they didn't even do anything for the $200 that they were charging me. Now remember, the seller has added a bunch of invoices to this listing. And if we add all of those up, they come up to $19,705. And this was all in the last 2 years since this vehicle was last on BringATrailer. So you would assume, as I did, that all of the kinks that needed to be worked out since it was sold last time have been worked out, and this is a great vehicle. After all, the only negative that the seller lists about this vehicle is that it leaks a slight amount of oil. So the last time this vehicle sold, it was for $33,000. And as a bonus, the extra wheels are coming along with it. So that means that if I can win the vehicle for less than $33,000, I am getting a really good deal. And if you add in the $19,000 that was spent on it, if I win the vehicle for less than $52,000, I am doing way better than the previous owner. And on Christmas Eve, my winning bid was $5,000 less than the truck sold for 2 years ago. That's almost a $25,000 value on what was spent on this Land Rover in the last 2 years. Once the vehicle showed up, however, the problems started to rear their ugly heads. The shipper backed the Defender out of the trailer, and then I pulled it around to the other side of my building. Immediately, it was already leaking something. Luckily, it's an easy fix, and after tightening down the number 4 injection line, it stopped leaking. Nothing has been leaking since, and I suspect that this is what the seller thought was an oil leak. The line was probably leaking a small amount, and then in the vibrations during the shipping process, loosened up until it was obvious that it was a diesel leak. And then after fixing the fuel leak, I could tell even before I had left the parking lot that there was another problem. The Defender was extremely sluggish. Now I know these vehicles are slow, but this was really slow. and it was hard to shift the transmission. It was obvious that there was a drag somewhere and it wasn't rolling smoothly. The engine was decelerating too quickly to smoothly shift the gears. So I put the Defender on the lift so that I could raise it up and get all 4 tires off the ground so that I could rotate them and find where the problem was. And what I found was completely ridiculous. The front right brake pads were falling out of the caliper and were jamming into the wheel. It had obviously been this way for a while because the brake pads had huge grooves in them made by the wheel rubbing on them. And the contact areas that were still in contact with the rotor were chewed down below the depth of the rest of the pad. And because the Defender was delivered in the middle of January in Iowa, I immediately noticed that no heat was coming out of the heater. So out came the heater core, and after trying to flush some solvent through it, it was obvious that it was 100% blocked, and the heat in this vehicle had probably not been working for a really long time. So at this point, the vehicle was not drivable because it's very cold here in Iowa. So I called up the seller and told them that I had ordered a new heater core. They agreed to reimburse me for the parts needed to fix the heater. And after the new heater core was put in and I was able to try to drive it again without freezing to death, it was obvious that it was not running correctly. It was only running on 3 cylinders, and 5th gear was completely unusable. If you shifted to 5th, the vehicle would slow down. This is the pickup version of the D90. This should be the fastest of the Defenders, and it should easily be able to drive down a highway. So not having the tools yet to work on the injection pump, I took it over to a local Land Rover shop, Rad Rover, and had them take a look at it. They took it for a quick test drive, and it was obvious that it was not running correctly. So they said I could leave it, and they'll have a look at it and figure out what's wrong with it. They took the grill and radiator out to get better access to everything. And it's good that I had this work done because a lot of bad things were uncovered.
Hey Steve, just got your timing cover removed here. It looks like somebody put too big of a bolt in there, which cracked the block, which this piece here fell off of, and then they put a bunch of some kind of silicone on it. Don't know if that's going to affect anything, but it's super oily in there. You may need a new crank seal.
They also found that the timing belt was wearing on the front cover and that the tensioner pulley was walking off the bearing. They replaced all of the broken parts and then swapped over a rebuilt 300 TDI injection pump that they had on the shelf. They then took it for a drive to make sure everything was working correctly. The Defender now easily drives over 120 kilometers per hour. And now, on top of my own labor fixing the fuel leak, heater core, and brakes, I now have an invoice for $4,300 to get the vehicle into driving condition the way it was advertised. And I haven't even mentioned yet that the radio was missing its GPS navigation card, and the horn doesn't work. So if this Defender had all that work done in the last 2 years, how can it be in that bad a shape? Well, this is where the story gets even worse. I contacted the seller, Elliott Bay Auto Brokers, about all of the issues that I've had with this vehicle and how I felt that this is not the way the vehicle was advertised. After all, the only problem they stated there was with this vehicle is that there was a slight oil leak. Nothing about the horn not working, nothing about the heater not working, nothing about it being so slow. What they said when I confronted them about how bad this vehicle drove is that these streets around their dealership are only 35-mile-per-hour roads. They didn't bother to figure out what they were advertising. They didn't bother to try to drive it on the highway. It's either that or they were not being truthful in the listing. The very wealthy owner of this vehicle, who was a CEO of a pet insurance company, traded this in to their dealership for a new French-made Ineos Grenadier. I did send my invoice for getting this Defender drivable over to the seller, but they refused to take care of any of it. And after doing some research, that's perfectly legal. If you buy any used vehicle, you are buying it as is, and it does not matter what condition it is after you have taken delivery of it. It seems that all or most states do not treat collectible vehicles differently than all other used cars. I was curious how much of a problem this vehicle was for the previous owner, so I sent him an email and I did not hear back from him. So next I contacted the shop that was on the majority of the invoices presented in the listing, and they told me they had not done very much work to this vehicle. In fact, all of those big invoices that say estimate at the top were only estimates and not work that was actually done, which explains why there were so many problems with this Defender, even though Elliott Bay Auto Brokers was making it seem that thousands and thousands of dollars were just spent on making this vehicle right. So what now? I have been in touch with BringATrailer. It took them a while to contact the seller and find out their side of the story. There's really nothing that they can do, but they did make a note, and if the seller ever tries to sell another vehicle on BringATrailer, I'm sure that they will check into that vehicle in a better manner than they did this one. And that's the main reason I'm making this video. It may seem that BringATrailer is an auction site where the vehicle you are bidding on is highly vetted by the community comments, but in reality, the auction is no different than buying from an auction house, which is just presenting the vehicle as having a year, make, and model, and no other information. The seller can say anything they want or leave out anything they want, and it's perfectly legal. I have bought and sold a lot of vehicles and never ran into a seller that was this incompetent about reading the room of where they're selling their vehicle. BringATrailer is a place where you are supposed to disclose everything that is wrong with your vehicle. You take hundreds, if not thousands, of pictures of that vehicle, show it from every angle, every little flaw, and there are just certain things that you cannot determine from pictures. We have to rely on the seller to tell us, does this vehicle drive correctly? Do the synchros in the transmission feel smooth? Or, like in this vehicle, can you tell that the synchros are starting to go bad because it has had mechanical problems for so long that it wasn't able to shift correctly? I've been a visitor to BringATrailer's website for a very long time, and a lot of my cars were shown up on old BringATrailer. When I would sell a car or buy a car, it was very likely that it would be on that website as one of the highlights of a vehicle for sale on the internet at that time. BringATrailer then moved on to doing auctions on their own site. I have sold a few vehicles through their auction system, but this was the very first purchase that I have ever made on BringATrailer. And I'd like to remind everyone, if you are buying a used vehicle, put a price on that vehicle based on exactly what you can see. And if you can't see it, just assume it's broken. And with that bombshell, I'll see you guys next time.